Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I hope you all got a chance to see this incredible view here of what we counted to be up to 10 separate water spouts at one given time here on the leading edge of this storm system that was just in the Gulf of Mexico south of Louisiana. What a beautiful view here. I want to thank Daniel for taking this picture and sending it out to us. The image looks a little bit photoshopped, but still it's pretty impressive. Now this is another view of those water spouts here, and again, we can count, 6 at a time in this particular image. And this one was pretty widely shared, so I didn't know who the original person who took this photo was. But what an interesting start to this video to look at these pretty impressive circulations coming from the leading edge of the squall line. Now, from there, we're going to talk about the bigger picture things, and that is 3 separate regions we're watching very carefully for tropical cyclone development. And there's a lot of pieces that are moving here that are going to be critical to these systems getting into the United States. And we can see a few of those things here on satellite. So we have tropical depression here, that's number 14. We have 13 on the backside. We're watching another area coming off of Africa. Now let me get those drawings off there and show you. First of all, the deeper trough that is here that's keeping part of the southeast on the drier side of things, because it is going to exit relatively quickly, it is going to allow for tropical depression number 14 to come over the Yucatan Peninsula and then get into the Gulf of Mexico where ocean temperatures are very warm. Between now and then, we're not expecting a lot of intensification. There is some issues with wind shear, and there's also some issues, of course, when it comes into contact with the Yucatan Peninsula, and there's some drier air that it's got to kind of chew on first. But the latest guidance I'll share in a few moments does show intensification as it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, and that lead trough, that one that's going to the southeast, begins to move out of the way. That will reduce wind shear. Secondly, the second system here, this is Tropical Depression 13, which was given that designation first. We do see some very healthy convection here in the overnight hours as we approach the Lesser Antilles. You'll see it at the very end of this animation, right in through here. See this? And as this begins to close off its circulation and head just to the north of the islands, it does have some drier air to contend with and temporarily some higher wind shear. But it is also forecast to get into the Gulf where it could intensify. And the system on the backside is just, I'm going to tell you, let's keep watching it. We're approaching the climatological max in the hurricane season over the next 3 weeks, and therefore we do need to just watch what comes off of Africa. So let's get straight to the latest updates from the National Hurricane Center, the 8 a.m. update here. And what I want you to see is that over the next few days here, so getting us through the weekend, the tracks from the European model, which are up here in the upper right-hand corner, these tracks, and then the GFS model tracks are very tight on this. In other words, not a lot of spread. And we can see that the National Hurricane Center keeps it to a tropical storm before it goes right here between Cuba and Florida. Then once getting into this section of the Gulf of Mexico, there's pretty good model agreement, and the National Hurricane Center's analysis suggests this will become a hurricane. Now, at this point, we are still going to have to watch. I mean, it's several days away, and kind of threading the needle here and getting out into the Gulf, this is still there's still quite a bit of spread, but it appears at this point that this will be having an impact here. And at this point, I cannot speculate on the full strength of this system. But again, my concern will always be the flooding rains with strong tropical systems this time of year. So we do see there's good agreement at this point in the models, but we're going to watch it over the weekend and report back to you to see if there's any significant changes. From there, I'd like to take you over to Tropical Depression 14, which possibly by later today could strengthen to tropical storm status. As it goes across the Yucatan Peninsula, the model guidance is very clear that it is going to cut right across. I mean, look, here's the GFS taking it across and the European taking it across. Now, from there, we do see pretty significant spread in both models, but the National Hurricane Center has got this strengthening to a hurricane before coming here toward the Texas-Louisiana border. But I'll tell you something, from Corpus Christi clear to New Orleans, maybe even farther over toward Mobile, this whole area is still in game for where this system could go. And because Tropical Depression 13 will be here on Tuesday, the interaction between these two systems will be interesting. We'll have to watch out for possibly an interaction that could give us the Fujiwara effect out of these two systems, which means they begin to rotate around one another. So at this particular point, I'm not going to be able to offer much more guidance than what we see from these two forecast models and from the National Hurricane Center, because this seems to be limited information at this point until we do a whole lot more reconnaissance on this system over the weekend and see how the models trend in the forecast. So that's where I'll leave it right now, but I want to take you and show you how much total accumulated precipitation we're expecting here from the European model. So over the next few days and into the weekend, we do see scattered storms across parts of the southeast. And as we get toward the end of this animation, you can see the heavy rains coming in from these tropical systems. So if we just work our way through Saturday into Sunday here and Monday, again, just quite a bit of scattered thunderstorm activity as we've been seeing so often down here over the southeast. So some locally heavy rains and also some stronger wind gusts out of some of these storms. But then as we work our way into, this will be early in the morning on Tuesday, right here, okay? Excuse me, I went a little too fast there. This is early in the morning on Tuesday. It appears that 14 will be, according to the operational European model, encroaching here on the Gulf Coast between Texas and Louisiana. And as it does so from there and moves inland, potential here exists for quite a bit of very heavy rainfall. Meanwhile, the second system is still working its way into the Gulf of Mexico. So as I go from this is early morning Wednesday, now spreading into the rest of next week. So this gets us out to next Friday evening. We can see the potential for the second system, Tropical Depression 13, to potentially be bringing in very heavy rainfall from the Florida coast through parts of Mississippi and Alabama right into this area, and then possibly get into the Appalachian Mountains beyond that. So to give us some better perspective on this, I brought along two other maps. The map on the left is the GFS ensemble, and the map on the right is the European. And now what we're looking at here is the probability of getting 2 inches or more of rainfall in the next 10 days. And so you can see that those probabilities are relatively low for Tropical Depression 13 at this point. That's the lead one here, the one that's coming into this area. In both models, much lower probabilities here. I'm going to call this into question. I think what's going on right now is that the ensembles are not in agreement as to where the heaviest rains are going to be. I think we could see much heavier rain along the Gulf Coast there in Texas and Louisiana. But they do have better agreement through this area, partly because of the rains coming over the next few days from the scattered storms and then from Tropical Depression 13, which then arrives next Tuesday into Wednesday. So we need to watch out very carefully. And to put this into context, just look at how much rainfall has hit those regions over the last 7 days. It's a lot more spotty here where we've had scattered storms that have come through. But as you work from Mississippi over toward Carolinas, that whole region, there have been some places in there that just in the last 7 days have had between 2 and 4 inches of rainfall with some locally heavier amounts. So this is going to be potentially a bigger flooding situation in this area once the system gets here. Okay. From there, I'd like to show you what the pattern looks like by day 10. Let's keep this longer term discussion going that we started on Wednesday. Better agreement in the models out to day 10 at this point. You can see that they're both putting the same ridge into the Gulf of Alaska. Here's the trough, a little bit different timing between the European and the GFS. The GFS a bit slower. That's over there on the left. But breaking down the big ridge that is out west. So they also have the downstream ridge here and the trough that's hanging off of the east coast. Now, beyond day 10, things really begin to deviate, and that's why we see here going out to day 15, the two models have troughs sweeping through the Canadian prairies, but at much different times. The GFS lagging the trough, allowing for a broader ridge to stay in place across much of our southern region. The European actually brings in split flow here. Trough comes in quicker, and the ridge begins to rebound to the west. So what does that mean? Like, what does those differences mean? They show up best in our precipitation forecast here. So with the broader ridge showing up in the GFS, look at the drier conditions from Texas all along the Gulf Coast. Now remember, at this point, we will not know deep into week 2 if there's something coming out of the tropics that could completely upset this. The models are currently not forecasting that. But the European still keeps that much broader sector here of wetter conditions, given that it advances the trough quicker, builds the ridge into the west, and you still get this flow that comes in this direction. That's going to have a major implication on temperatures as well. So let's finish up our video talking about that. High temperatures today. The heat's going to remain in western Texas, getting into New Mexico and Arizona, with much of the southeast and mid-south seeing slightly cooler than average weather. Playing this one forward, let's get into the day on Saturday. It's much of the same here, and it goes into the weekend that way. So this area continues to see, with the deeper trough that is in this region, near average to cooler than average weather. So a lot of upper 80s to 90 degrees. As we get into Monday and Tuesday, we're going to see the influence of the tropical systems bringing their cloud cover in, hence the cooler conditions that tend to survive there, excuse me, while heat builds north of that. This is next Wednesday into next Thursday. So again, what we'll see here mostly, excuse me, is going to be cloud cover influenced in terms of our cooler temperatures here across the south. From there, I would like to show you the model comparison for days 6 through 10. Good agreement at this point. Remember, through day 10, things looked pretty good between the models in terms of the temperature patterns. But look out here at day 11 through 15. With the GFS keeping that trough west, the European bringing it through, building in the ridge out west, substantial, significant differences here in the temperatures in the mid-plains, the central plains, into the southern plains. So Texas, this has implications for you, and then as you get over to the lower Mississippi River Valley, changes as well. So big model agreement here on the advancement of this next trough, and I'm going to have to spend the weekend trying to figure out exactly how this moves. But I would like to update you on one last thing. Remember this week on Wednesday, I said, wow, the European model has not picked up on this cooler bias for that September 4th through September 10th timeframe that the CFSV2 had been hinting at. Well, we got our new data from the European model last night, and it has actually come into agreement with that. But I want to point out that the European model for the week that is our peak in the hurricane season here has really got a lot going on down here in the Gulf of Mexico, as you can see. And I think we're going to have to keep just a very close eye on any tropical systems that could potentially develop, because the Gulf of Mexico ocean temperatures are extremely warm. So is it in the Caribbean, the Western Atlantic, and along the Gulf Stream. So we have a scenario setting up here with the strengthening of the La Nina temporarily that could just point toward a lot of tropical activity right at the peak of the season. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'll watch it, and I'll report back to you, okay? Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you again soon.